Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here with you. Thank you for allowing me to come into your homes and share a few thoughts and memories and what have you about agriculture. I remind you that our farmers produce all these commodities, soybeans, corn, cotton, etc. And then part of our balance of trade is greatly enhanced by us being able, that is, the U.S. being able to sell to foreign countries. And as far as our number one trade partners, for years upon years, China has been our number one trade partner, and Mexico second in trade. As we go forward now, this trend is beginning to shift, and the Mexico could very soon be our number one trade partner, seconded by China. This is what I'm talking about. China and Mexico are the number one and number two markets, respectively, for U.S. ag exports by dollar value. But a new trend over the last few years has emerged regarding the exchange rates between these countries. All else being equal, a stronger foreign currency favors U.S. exports, and that's good news for us. That said, for the past 2 years, China's yuan has depreciated relative to the U.S. dollar, while the Mexican peso has strengthened in the same time. Because of this, the Economic Research Service of the United States notes a decrease in export opportunities to China and an increase in export opportunities to Mexico. So that's something very interesting. And again, we are beginning to see a flip-flop in trade relations, that is in volume and dollar value. And a lot of it, again, has to do with the exchange rates. And I guess I'll just emphasize that the Mexican peso has strengthened, and that has been positive to our exports to them. So we appreciate that very much. I'd like to talk a little bit about an entity that has been gaining momentum in agricultural activity out of Raleigh, and that's the Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Trust. What this has to do with, ladies and gentlemen, has to do with a lot of our precious farmland is being taken up and developed into housing developments and shopping centers and all kinds of activities that are taking the land out of agricultural production. There has been a movement and continues to be a movement to curb some of this and preserve some of the land in a perpetual trust whereby it'll always be in agricultural use. This is what I'm trying to say here. The Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Trust Fund supports the farming, forestry, and horticultural communities within the agriculture industry, purchasing agricultural conservation easements, funding public and private enterprise programs to promote profitable and sustainable family farms, and providing funding for conservation easements targeted at the active production of food, fiber, and other agricultural products. That's kind of a general overview of it. And so to keep that going, to ensure perpetuation of this, and mainly to keep some of our farmland truly in farmland, we have a lot of activity coming out of Raleigh to assist in that. The North Carolina Agricultural Development and Farmland Preservation Trust Fund recently awarded over $15 million to protect working farms and forests, support county farmland preservation efforts, and promote agricultural enterprises. More than $12.8 million went towards securing 46 agricultural conservation easements on 5,000 acres of land across the state. These family farms will be permanently protected from development, becoming North Carolina Forever Farms. That is a new buzzword, North Carolina Forever Farms. These grants are instrumental in preserving our precious farmland, a resource critical to producing food and fiber today and in the future, and a vital part of our state's heritage and economy, says North Carolina Agriculture Commissioner Steve Troxler. While we celebrate this achievement, there is more work to be done. We must continue investing in our farmers, and North Carolina's future. So I would say that is good news, and efforts are being made to preserve some of this wonderful legacy that we all too often take for granted. Moving on to another subject today, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to talk about deer and wildlife and the phenomenon of the antler growth that occurs in the deer herd. When you stop and think about it, antlers seem like the stuff of science fiction rather than real life. They are bones that grow extremely fast outside of a mammal's body, and every year they fall off and grow back. For whitetails at the peak of development, antlers will grow a quarter of an inch per day. For bull elk, it's more like an inch per day. That's phenomenally quick, ladies and gentlemen. To put that in perspective, imagine that one spring morning you woke up and had two bones growing out of your forehead. In about a week, they would be 7 inches long, and 2 weeks later, you'd be knocking into every door frame you tried to walk through. While there is still a lot to learn about antlers, here are some of the secrets behind how antlers grow and what it takes to get them big and ominous and noticeable. Before diving into the nitty-gritty of antler growth, we should get one thing straight. Whitetails, mule deer, elk, moose, caribou, and many other antlered animals across the globe are part of the same deer family, known as the Cervidae. Male cervids, as well as female caribou, evolved to have antlers, and unlike horns, antlers are made of bone and are shed and grown back every year in a continuous cycle. For a large part of the year, they are made up of living tissue, whereas horns are made of dead, fingernail-like tissue called keratin and remain attached to the animal year after year. Two whitetails sparring with their antlers during the rut. Two whitetails sparring with their antlers during the rut. That is a picture we have seen in nature programs, or maybe seen it in person locally, or wherever we may seek the presence of deer. That's the reason cervids have antlers, is for mating purposes, because they live in competitive societies and mate like spring breakers. Males need something to work out their differences with and attract the ladies. Now this is about deer now. Big pointy antlers are just the ticket, and while it's important to note that they aren't trying to kill each other, deer, elk, moose, and other cervids spend their respective mating seasons using their headgear to duke it out for the cows and the does. Now, what causes antler growth? The short answer is a combination of nutrition, genetics, and age, but it's a little more complicated than that. The perfect combination of these factors is still hard to track, but when the formula is right, a buck or bull's antlers will grow abnormally large. Here's a breakdown of how the big three factors for antler growth work. A stag feeding in a field of green grass. Cervids need access to high-quality, protein-rich forage to grow big antlers. The better the habitat, the bigger the antlers will be at any age. As a general rule, protein-rich forage contributes immensely to antler growth. According to the research that has been done, a 16% protein diet, bucks consistently grew antlers that were twice as big as bucks on an 8% protein diet. In 4 years, the bucks that had more protein were sporting racks that scored 20 points higher on the Boone and Crockett scale. Local native forage varies depending on where you hunt, and in some cases, agriculture and food plots play the most significant role in local deer diet in terms of wild, high-quality forage. Some examples cited by these research groups, and that contributes to the growth and to the presence and the size of the antlers. Seasonal changes in rainfall will affect the levels of protein in forage, and supplemental feeding is often used to support antler growth. Many hunting clubs that have a deer management program participate in the supplements of protein and things of vitamins such as that, food plots for the deer that are high in protein, and over time it makes a positive difference. Also, a big factor in the growth of horns, antlers that is, are genetics. This one is thrown around a lot at deer camps, but it's a tricky thing to define in the wild. While it's easy to think about big rack bucks producing more big rack bucks, this is just the way it is. Nutrition and habitat both impact growth regardless of genetics. Unless you're selectively breeding deer in captivity, it's hard to tell what is going on. What we do know is that just like other animals, genetics are a two-part equation, and both the mother and father play equally important roles. Genetics will determine the shape and size of the antler, and studies have shown that big antlers are hereditary, and that's something to be mindful of as well. However, the other external factors impact antler growth so greatly that it's not the best thing to focus on. The upshot of this, small deer in our area are most likely not genetically inferior. They're probably just coming up short on the other two factors, that is, of age and nutrition. Age, nutrition, and habitat. Age is a big factor. Before a buck can be called a monster or a hog or a toad or a booner, it has to survive a few seasons. Simply put, dead bucks can't grow antlers. Like the best things in life, antlers get better with time. Whitetail buck will reach generally his prime in 4 to 6 years, and for an elk it's more like 8 to 12 years. Age is one of the easiest factors humans can manipulate to see bigger antlers. Regulations like point restrictions and deer camp customs like passing up smaller bucks can be helpful. Now, with all that considered, you might say, how do antlers grow? Male cervids have two soft spots on their skulls called pedicels. In the spring or early summer, two nubs form at the pedicels and are covered in a sensitive type of skin called velvet. The velvet is packed with blood vessels that rapidly bring blood, oxygen, and nutrients that the antlers need for growth. The antlers grow from the tip, starting as cartilage, and then calcify into hard bone as they go, a skull of a stag with lopsided antlers, for instance. During the velvet stage, cervids try to avoid contacting their antlers with just about everything. Injuries to velvet during antler growth can cause changes. Abnormalities and injuries to other parts of a deer's body, such as the leg, can affect antler growth as well. Once the antlers are fully grown, the velvet is cut off from the blood supply, and it dries up and dies before getting rubbed off by the animal. By the time the rut kicks off, and that usually is in late October on into the middle of November, it coincides often with the full moon, etc. Deer's antlers are actually dead bone. Throughout the season, the connections between the pedicels and the antlers weaken, and usually during the winter, well after mating, the antlers fall off. In a matter of weeks, the cycle starts all over again. Depending on the period or amount of sunlight during the day a male cervid is exposed to, they will either be growing or shedding their antlers. Generally, the more sunlight there is, the more the antlers will grow. The change in light triggers the pineal gland to tell the pituitary gland to release more testosterone. With the boost in testosterone, deer antlers can grow up to 2 inches per week, and in some cases, bull moose can put on a pound of bone per day during the peak of their growth cycle. Here is a general timeline of the antler growth cycle, although depending on the area or species, the exact months may differ. So that is intriguing as well. But here's a timeline of antler growth and the cycle of it. April through May, which we would consider spring, antler growth begins from the permanent bases on the male cervid's skull. It is slow to start, growing from the tip out. We move into June to July, that would be midsummer. With the increase in sunlight, growth increases rapidly. The bulk of bull's energy is focused on growth. We move into September, we would call that late summer. As fall draws near and the days get shorter, growth slows. The antlers become mineralized, harden up, and blood eventually stops flowing to the velvet. The velvet dries, and afterward it takes about 24 hours for a buck or bull to shed his velvet. When October on into December occurs, we would call that late fall into early winter. The hardened antlers are now dead bone, and at this point, bucks or bulls can use them for things that they do best during the rut, rubbing trees, fighting, showing off to females, and getting into all sorts of trouble. We approach January, and this cycle goes from January into March, considered late winter to early spring. Male cervids can only maintain a connection between the pedicel and the antler when testosterone levels are high. So as daylight hours dwindle, levels taper off, the connection weakens, eventually the antlers are shed, and without them, the pedicels are open wounds. Scabs form, and in a matter of weeks, antler growth begins again. So in a way, genetics do play a part in antler growth, but the idea that genetics are set in stone to produce small deer is not exactly true. Manage the land accordingly, and in a few generations, smaller cervids could grow into exponentially bigger ones. And this is a good thing for hunters. I've enjoyed being with you today. My time has run out. I look forward to being back next week, and I perhaps will have a little more to say about antler growth in my report next week. Thank you for letting me be with you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting and complimenting this agribusiness report. Have a good week, and God bless.